Hello and welcome. I'm Brenna Clanton, your worship lead for today. My pronouns are she, her. As we begin our service, I invite you to silence your phone, close any windows on your computer, take a deep breath, and center yourself for worship. So we open and welcome to the ancestral people of this land, acknowledging that our church, like Olive Burke, rests on the unceded territory of the Manahoac tribe of the Great Sioux Nation. We seek healing and the realization of justice with the people of this land who live on in their descendants, the present-day members of the Monacan Indian Nation, the Patawomack Indian Tribe of Virginia, and the Piscataway Indian Nation. We honor the ancestors as we move toward healing, so that all together shall one day know full justice. I'm also going to add in another just point of announcement this morning that I think it's helpful for everyone to know as we move into today's worship. Today is a worship that has been a community effort. Not everything as planned, and we are honoring, I think the first thing I want to start off by saying is that Rev Lev is currently on bereavement leave for the passing of his mother-in-law, Sandra Spivey. And so today you will hear more about that, some ways that we can go about honoring, and I'm just grateful for everyone's work in today's service and putting this all together. I've asked Nancy to light our chalice this morning. Our opening words are by Gordon McKeeman. Deep calls unto deep. Joy calls unto joy. Light calls unto light. Let the kindling of this flame rekindle in us the inner light of love, of peace, of hope. And as one flame lights another, nor grows the less. We pledge ourselves to be bearers of the light wherever we are.
Good morning. Good morning. And welcome to Accotink Unitarian Universalist Church. I am Nancy Melito. My pronouns are she, her, and I am happy to be your worship associate today. This congregation is a welcoming and inclusive community that seeks to create a more just and compassionate world. If you are new to Accotink and would like to talk more about this church, please be sure to reach out to me, our minister, Reverend William Levewood, our guest minister today, our very own Brenna Clanton, or one of today's greeters. Whether you're a longtime member or a newcomer or something in between, we encourage you to stay for our social hour online and in person immediately after this service. And I believe we also have a TAC opportunity coming up today after service as well. So if you'd like to join us for the True Accotink Colors workshop today, please come and stay with us. We're so delighted you decided to join us today. And we hope next week you will join us for our third bake sale to profit the Meal Pack program. This is the third year Sacred Wheel is doing a bake sale to raise money for the Meal Pack program. We hope you will join us today, and welcome.
Hi, everybody. I'm here with your February Read Aloud for the IB attribute of balanced. So we're going to be hearing a story written by Thich Nhat Hanh, and it is actually based on a true story of something that happened in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. And I thought it was appropriate because it's the story of somebody who tries to maintain balance and kindness even during a catastrophe that was happening in his country. Okay, so I am hoping you enjoy it. The Coconut Monk. There once was a monk who lived on a small island in Vietnam. He spent his time sitting in a coconut tree and eating coconuts, so people called him the Coconut Monk. The Coconut Monk had two good friends, a cat and a mouse. Every day they would climb up the coconut tree and play together. The Coconut Monk enjoyed sitting high in the tree with his friends. He would watch the boats going by on the Mekong Delta and listen to the birds sing. The Coconut Monk lived in a time when Vietnam was at war. All the fighting made him very sad. One day he went out walking. While he walked, he collected bits of metal, pieces of bombs and bullets that littered the land. He melted all the pieces and molded them together to make a beautiful bell. He told the pieces of metal, "You have been playing the game of war. Now you can help create peace." Every night before going to sleep, he would strike the bell. Its music echoed out into the night sky. The Coconut Monk decided to go and ask the president to stop the war. He didn't have any belongings, so packing was very easy. He just climbed down the tree and he was ready to go. But the Coconut Monk didn't go alone. His two friends, the cat and the mouse, came along to keep him company. They traveled for many days and nights. Even though the road was rough and the journey long, they stopped often to notice the beauty around them. At night, the monk slept leaning against a tree, and the cat and the mouse slept together in a basket. Sometimes it was rainy and cold, and the friends huddled together. Other times it was warm, and they played in the sunshine. Finally, they reached the presidential palace, a huge white building surrounded by guards. The guards would not let them in. "What can you, a simple monk, have to say to the president?" they demanded. The Coconut Monk held up the basket with the cat and the mouse playing happily together. "I would like all people to live together in peace," he said, "the way my friends, the cat and the mouse, do. Surely our differences are not bigger than theirs." When the guards heard this, they became angry. "You fool!" they shouted and grabbed the monk. They threw him in prison. Because the cat and the mouse wouldn't leave their friend, the guards had to throw them in prison too. The prison was dark and cold, but the Coconut Monk sat very quietly and continued to breathe peacefully, just as he had in his coconut tree. The Coconut Monk shared his food with the cat and the mouse and all the other prisoners, and even though there wasn't much food, the cat didn't eat the mouse. People started asking about the Coconut Monk. They wrote letters and visited him in prison. Soon the guards had no choice but to release him. The monk, the cat, and the mouse returned to their coconut tree. If a cat and a mouse can live together in peace, don't you think we humans can too?
A reading from the wisdom of Thich Nhat Hanh. Picture a tree in a storm. At the top of the tree, the small branches and leaves are swaying violently in the wind. The tree looks vulnerable, quite fragile. It seems it can break at any time. But if you look at the trunk, you will see the tree is solid. And if you look down to its root structure, you will know that the tree is deeply and firmly rooted in the soil. The tree is quite strong. It can resist the storm. We are also a kind of tree. Our trunk, our center, is just below our navel. The zones of our thinking and our emotions are at the levels of the head and chest. When we are taken hold of by a strong emotion, like despair, fear, anger, or jealousy, we should do our best to leave the zone of the storm and go down to the valley to practice breathing in and out. If we stay in the winds of the storm, it may be too dangerous. We can go for refuge into the trunk, breathing in and out, aware of the rising and falling of our abdomen.
I have many gifts today. One of them is the gift of new technology. So some of you may be able to see, but this is a first, and what a gift to be able to have technology. I also want to share another one of our gifts today that I haven't mentioned, but I would like to just give a shout out to our guest musician today, Zach Sandler. So grateful for your musical talents and for joining us for today's service. As I start this, I will also say this is an adapted sermon from Rev Lev. So what a gift to have his words. As we were going through this today, or this past week, I had a little bit of homework. I'm not going to give you all homework, and we have some resources in here that if you are moved to watch the movie that this is based off of, feel free. I will be happy to share with you where I found it. So I want to start with a picture. There is a Japanese animated film in which there is a character that actually becomes a tree. Roots grow out of his legs, leaves bud and sprout from his arms and shoulders and from his hair. And as he sits, he is becoming a tree. As you listen, I would invite you to keep this image in mind, an image of a deeply rooted peace. So this morning I'm going to talk about resilience and mindfulness, incorporating some of the teachings of Vietnamese Zen teacher Thich Nhat Hanh. As a young adult, Nhat Hanh was involved as a peace activist during the Vietnam War. And in 1964, he founded the School of Youth for Social Service. There he trained young monks, nuns, and lay people as social workers. They helped to rebuild villages, relocate refugees, and provided food, education, medical supplies, and spiritual support for people whose lives had been shattered by the war. Many of the youth doing this work were attacked, even killed. In 1966, Nhat Hanh helped to found the Order of Interbeing. The order dedicates itself to the support of Buddhism, mindfulness, social responsibility, and nonviolence. Soon after founding the order, Nhat Hanh traveled to the U.S. to share the suffering of the Vietnamese people and to call for peace. He met with officials of the U.S. government, and he went on an extensive speaking tour of North American cities. It was during this time that he met Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Thomas Merton. When word of his efforts to bring peace and understanding reached Vietnam, he was refused permission to return home. I didn't know that about his story. Later in life, he raised awareness about the plight of the Vietnamese boat people, refugees who were refused asylum, which often meant they were pushed back out to sea in their ramshackle boats. In 1982, with other members of the Order of Interbeing, Thich Nhat Hanh founded Plum Village, a meditation and retreat center in France, where he lived until his death earlier this year in January. So today's service focuses on a movie that came out in 2017 called Walk With Me. And this is about Thich Nhat Hanh and others in the Plum Village community. I believe Rev Lev actually got to see it in theaters. I got to see it on my phone. But I can imagine, if you can imagine a movie that is about meditation and a community, a sangha with Thich Nhat Hanh, how calming it is. So while I didn't get to experience that big screen experience, I can imagine how it must have changed just that experience of watching it. When I was a chaplain intern this past year at NIH, I was exposed and witnessed hospital staff, patients, and family exposed to things a lot of suffering and stress that is agitating to the nervous system and that activates our fight or flight response. I know we all know, especially coming out of a pandemic, that this is wearing on body, mind, heart, and spirit. As the reading shared today, it becomes important to find a way to remain centered and balanced, to calm one's nervous system for the sake of one's own well-being, and in order to be able to continue to do so, to continue that work of helping others to heal. There's a lot of emphasis right now, at least in research literature, about fostering resilience and the importance of self-care. In a nutshell, resilience is the ability to calm our nervous system during and after difficult experiences. So recently, I was listening to an episode of the podcast On Being, featuring Joan Halifax, who is a Zen Buddhist like Thich Nhat Hanh, and who works with the dying. As part of the program, she spoke about research which studied master Tibetan meditators who've done more than 10,000 hours of meditating. That's a lot of meditating. And what they found was that they were more able to enter the experience of the suffering of others and to rebound, to come back into their own baseline. So if you think about that reading, to have that center of your tree. And they're able to do that more quickly. So when we think about resilience, we know that it's not about avoiding suffering. It's not about dulling our empathy. It's about giving ourselves a deeply rooted peace. Can you all feel the roots growing out of your feet yet? A calm center so we can enter skillfully into the suffering of others, offering support safely and effectively. So we'll talk about Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching, starting with the movie Walk With Me. And I'm going to share 3 things from that movie. So there are 3 things at Plum Village that are used to calm the nervous system. One is the practice of mindfulness. Another is the predictable routine that the people within Plum Village follow. So I don't know if anybody else here can relate to that, but routine has become a really a cornerstone, a touchstone for me. And the final one is the close-knit community, their sangha. So we'll spend a little bit of time exploring these 3 things today. So let's begin with mindfulness. Does anybody here within the room want to shout out anything that comes to mind as far as mindfulness for them? And I will repeat it so everyone can hear. Any thoughts?
Being present.
Being present, yes. Anything else come to mind? There are no right or wrong answers here.
State of being.
State of being. So mindfulness is state of being. Wonderful. We have a third one? You all have really done a good job of covering it.
Reflection.
Reflection, thank you. So mindfulness we can think about as state of being, being present, reflection, giving attention to whatever is happening here in this present moment. One of the nuns at Plum Village explains it by saying that there's never just mindfulness. It is also mindfulness about something, right? Mindfulness of breathing, mindfulness of washing dishes, mindfulness of our thoughts and relating with other people, and it can go on and on. I remember one of the first sermons I ever gave was about a reading from Thich Nhat Hanh about a meditation on doing dishes. I really aspired to want to enjoy doing dishes. I know others have shared with me, not a favorite thing. And still not a favorite thing. In Buddhism, one trains in mindfulness through sitting meditation with a focus on the breath. The breath becomes that strong trunk of the tree, reaching down into the roots. It is a place the practitioner can return to, can abide in, even as other sensations, thoughts, and feelings arise. So breath awareness, mindfulness of the breath, is very important in developing a deeply rooted peace so that we can weather the stormy winds that beat against our branches. In meditation, it's an easy mistake to think that we need to banish our thoughts. I know that is exactly what I thought when I first walked into a meditation room when I was a young adult. The idea is simply to observe and make friends with everything that arises. So Thich Nhat Hanh talks about always having a half smile. I don't know if you've ever seen any videos, but there's usually a smile on his face and others in the room. This isn't a naive Pollyannish idealism. It's important to say that he's not trying to cover up our emotions. Our negativity is part of who we are, and it's as real as any other part. But the smiling is a way of staying rooted in the breath, to calm the nervous system, even as we allow ourselves to experience and explore whatever is arising. I love this image of the empty sky. I had never heard of that, and it is an image that is offered up here. It is always present. If you think about, there's always the empty sky, and it is a background upon which there are clouds. It is a background for a flight of birds, a storm coming through. I learned a little bit about weather this past week, by the way. It always rains in North Carolina in the mountains in the evening. So the sky was a beautiful thing to watch. So Thich Nhat Hanh tells us to smile whatever thoughts, feelings, and sensations arise. Smiling is a way of encouraging us to experience that clear, empty sky. This is something we can depend on. It's the ground for our deeply rooted peace. So that's an introduction to the first part, mindfulness. Let's talk a little bit about routine. I always feel like this is a discussion we often have in August, coming up to September, when some of us are going back to school. I want to start with a quote from Karen Maizen Miller, a Zen practitioner, mother, and author. She says this: "In the Zen tradition, monastic training consists of the very same things we might reluctantly do at home every day: cooking, cleaning, and yard work. Yet in practice, their actions require great depth and maturity. In Zen meditation, we cook ourselves into a state of even mindfulness, at ease, with things as they are. Tasks are undertaken not because we want to do them, would like to do them, not because we choose to do them, not because we have suitable talent, temperament, or ingredients, not for reward or appreciation, but simply because it is time. Simply because it is time." This is a big part of Zen practice. When it is time to wash the dishes, you just wash the dishes. And despite what our parents sometimes say when we were little, or for those of us who are still in this, when it's time to brush your teeth, you just brush your teeth. So I know about the importance of routine, I think from my past experience here at the preschool that rents space from this church. When we were in Springmar Cooperative Preschool, my kids attended, and I had to show up as a teacher's assistant. And routine was very important in the preschool setting. For adults too, though, having a consistent routine is calming to our nervous systems as well. I'm not particularly consistent in my routines, and it doesn't come easily to me. But I know that having a consistent routine is calming to the nervous system. It's also conducive to my well-being. So one simple thing that I've started doing, and it was interesting to see that Rev Lev also had the same thing written down, but I start off the day with a glass of water. I actually have glasses of water that are capped in my fridge with lemon, so that I have no excuse in the morning but to start off with that. And I'm able to do it before I'm fully awake. And this has been just one small thing that I know, my body is depleted of water in the morning. This is good for me, calms my nervous system, and is conducive to my well-being. Deeply rooted peace. Another thing that I hear people talk about, and I've also done, courtesy of technology, but did I get my 10,000 steps in today? That's another thing that I've made part of my daily habits. I know it improves my mood, it improves my sleep, so I make a real effort. Don't always make it. And it's all connected. I know that if I feel better, if I get the exercise and the fluids and the sleep I need, then I'm able to go about my day in a better fashion. Calmed nervous system. It's good for my well-being. And things just seem to flow. It's all interconnected. So that's an introduction to the second part, routine. And let's talk about community. I think for me, speaking from my own experience, this has been the hardest one for me. I am sitting here with a community that means so much to me. And yet I know that much of my life I've done a lot and just tried to do it on my own. So the community of practitioners in Buddhism is called a sangha. Thich Nhat Hanh names friends as the most essential element of Buddhist practice. It is difficult, even impossible, to practice, he says, without a sangha. He describes a group of isolated individuals as a collection of trees without roots. And it makes me think, if you ever see a clear-cut wood, or I watched a couple of years ago, for example, my neighbors took out some trees, what often happens is that community is taken away. And those trees that are now facing the wind don't have the community that they relied on as a buffer. Intimate, deep relationships are essential for developing a deeply rooted peace. So I just want to share a little bit about some of the research that supports the idea that there's great resilience in individuals when they are embedded within a supportive community. Tom Rath of the Gallup poll says that studies show we need 6 hours or more of social interaction on any given day for optimal well-being. This sounds like a lot of time, but remember, this is not quality interactions, but just interactions with others. When I read this, and I think we've talked a lot about this during the pandemic, but it made me realize how challenging it has been to be in isolation, during the past couple of years. So now that things are opening up more, let us make time in our busy lives to reach out to others, to stop and have lunch with coworkers, put down our phones at the dinner table, and really be with each other. Simple things like this can make a big difference. So here's some basic things we can learn about resilience from the Zen tradition, from Thich Nhat Hanh, and they are interconnected. So as I mentioned before, if I'm eating better, chances are I'm also moving more, getting sleep, anything that I need to do for my own well-being. And the same thing is true with mindfulness, routine, and community. When we are engaged in community, it can support our mindfulness and our healthy routines. And likewise, when we engage in healthy routines, likewise, it shows up in our community life and our mindfulness. So these are the 3 elements that are a recipe for a deeply rooted peace. And this deeply rooted peace is the foundation for insight. It allows us to see things as they truly are. Like the image of a person becoming a tree, we are deeply rooted and we are not isolated individuals. We are fully interconnected with everything around us, our well-being and the well-being of the world. We are one with trees and the entire web of life. I'm curious from those that are in front of me, how many of you have read something by Thich Nhat Hanh? I have a few hands. Many of us have heard of him and his work. Some of this may be new to some of you, and yet we were all able to share his teachings today. So I think I'll close with just this some questions, thoughts about how do we take these small things that we can do and put it into practice? What can you do to practice mindfulness, incorporate healthy habits into your daily routines, and deepen your engagement in a supportive community? What other things nurture resilience for you? Things that I haven't mentioned this morning. What are they, and what can you do to incorporate them into your life? So this is the part, the call to action, right? So I shared the experience of the drinking of the glass of water first thing in the morning. It was interesting at this, one of the things that also showed up in this reflection for today is the idea that we may also be able to use things like technology. You know, there are apps, for example, that can help us track water or the steps we take. There are apps that allow us to connect. And just because one source, technology or a tool works for one person doesn't mean it works for all of us. So I would encourage you to start small, experiment, and find what works for you. And whatever you do, don't do it just with your mind. And don't just listen to these words. But find a way that works for you. Experiment and put some of this into practice. May we all go forward with a little bit more mindfulness, routine, and community in our day. So a deeply rooted peace, may it be so. Blessed be and amen.
I invite you now to join me in our community blessing. And as always, with these words of David Bumbaugh, I ask you to stand as you are willing and able, and to stretch out your hands to our fellow Accotinkers here in this community. And if you are home, stretch your hands out to the screen as we say together the words over here from David Bumbaugh. This church is dedicated to the proposition that behind all our differences and beneath all our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together in spite of time, death, and the space between the stars. We pause now in silent witness to that unity.
So may we all find the first glass of water in the morning that allows us to find our deeply rooted peace. So go forth in our continued search for mindfulness. Grateful for our community today, both online and in person, and blessed be. May it be so.